she was telling me that maybe I should eat some eggs every once in a while. And Dave, I just was horrified. I said, eggs. I mean, this is how brainwashed I was. Eggs will kill you, man. All that cholesterol.
Scott, how did you find carnivore?
Well, things begin in 2020. Of course, that was a tough time for everyone. Um, I was on, intense lockdown with my then wife. There was a lot of work stress that had been going on in my life for some time. I was in a leadership position, really maxing out my energies, emotional, intellectual, and physical, frankly. The lockdown only added to that, trying to keep the institution I work for going. And then I got to experience, although I was driving maybe 3 hours a week just to pick up some food, I got to experience being rear-ended in our car quite badly in August 2020. And I got a concussion. It was pretty bad. I mean, I had to have people fill in for me for work. And as it turns out, the stress and the concussion, going together, this concussion symptoms, and they were quite debilitating, stretched out. I mean, really today I'm still dealing with it. Carnivore has been part of my recovery from that, or an attempt to recover. My life started unraveling from that. I mean, I really got quite sick. I could barely look at computer screens. I was having nausea and vertigo day to day. It was a panoply of symptoms. I mean, not to mention the headaches. And it was really quite horrifying. I started shrinking physically. I was afraid to move because it was causing more symptoms. And to make a long, kind of very dreary story short, my wife, about a year later, then ended up ending our marriage, just very unexpectedly. So my life kind of came apart, except maybe, I didn't lose my job, but I was in a very bad shape, psychologically, and physically. So I started rebuilding my life. I had to move, obviously, and started up a new life, trying to get better from this injury. And I started seeing someone new, actually someone that I reconnected with from my earlier days when I was a young man. And she and I are, now seeing each other. My girlfriend had herself, unbeknownst to me, because I hadn't talked to her for many, many years, had gone through a cancer crisis. And she herself had then gone on a health journey. And the reason I bring this up is that she's the one that introduced me to all of this. I have her to thank. She began investigating healthcare, medical care, what doctors can and can't do to you for you. I think do to you is probably more accurate. And became interested in other modalities. Again, this is all before we reconnected. But once we did reconnect, and things have been just wonderful. Over time, conversations about health, diet, the fact that I had put on quite a bit of weight from when she knew me in the past, those topics came up. And, at first she started saying, maybe the sugar in your coffee every morning is not such a great idea. I said, come on, I'm not drinking Cokes, but, this isn't so bad. I think she really wanted me to lose some weight. She had an old image of me, and it was understandable. One of the things from the illness and the injury was that I was taking some medications that really put on a lot of weight. And I never really had serious weight problems during my life, but a kind of yo-yo sort of thing. I was pretty health conscious, so I never let myself get really, really heavy, but it did go up and down. I'm talking about 40 pounds. I'm not a big framed person, so 30, 40 pounds on me is quite a bit. The other thing that we started talking about was that I had the year prior to the pandemic, Dave, because I was always interested in nutrition and food. I've been vegetarian a number of different times. Like you, I'd spent a lot of time in Japan, so I was pescatarian for many years. But in 2019, I watched a very bad movie that I believed hook, line, and sinker called Forks Over Knives. I don't recommend anyone watching it because it's full of propagandistic malarkey about what to eat. But I became vegan in 2019, just literally a year before the pandemic. And the reason I mention that is that it turns out with the psychological issues that came from the injury, and it was a lot of anxiety, and I became depressed. My doc did run some blood work, and one of the first things he said was, "You are highly B12 deficient." And when I look back now on the stress and the psychological trauma of just the pandemic itself and then the injury and what it was doing to me and the confusion it was causing, the questions of whether I would ever get better. I don't think B12 deficiency is really good for your psychological health. I now know. So that was a very bad confluence of choices, and then the accident. So all of those things came up in my conversations with my girlfriend, and I remember one conversation we had. She doesn't live where I live, so this was on the phone. But she was telling me that maybe I should eat some eggs every once in a while. And Dave, I just was horrified. I said, eggs? I mean, this is how brainwashed I was. Eggs will kill you, man. All that cholesterol. I had believed this for decades. And I've got 2 books here for show and tell. When I wrote to you, I said I've got some books. I'm kind of a history person, and it may show the kind of alpha and omega of my journey in all of this. But yeah, I had believed cholesterol, eggs. I remember with a lot of guilt, once I discovered how wrongheaded this was, back a number of years with my then wife, I had hounded her into quitting eggs in the morning. She had eaten 1 egg every morning before work and probably some other things, but she was a steady Eddie on that egg a day. And there was a headline in about 2017. Again, now I understand, and I should have known better, these ridiculous extrapolation headlines that mean, and this is the kind of thing you cover so well, complete perversions of what the data even might be slightly hinting at with no proof. But there was a report about eggs being equivalent to a certain number of cigarettes a day, like half a pack a day or something like that. I don't know if you recall that, but I just recall
Michael Greger has still got a video about that on his Nutrition Facts website.
Horrifyingly stupid. And I still have guilt. Luckily, I don't have much contact with my ex-wife now, but at a certain point, I was able to tell her after I realized, please, I apologize for hounding you about those eggs. Please eat them again. So that conversation happened with my girlfriend, and she of course was laughing, like, you just really need to look into it. She turned me on to, this is the first book, I'm just going to flash, Ivor Cummins' book, Eat Rich and Live Long. And I got this book in the fall, winter of 2022. So after my marriage was over, I was trying to rebuild my life in a new place. I had started seeing this person. I thought, okay, I'll look into this. It sounds intriguing. I was just blown away by this book. I mean, just I'm going to give you just how simplistic my brain was before. He indicates that, there is nutrition in meat and butter. Now, of course, I knew meat had protein, and I, of course, knew that it had iron. But this is all you ever hear. I never knew it had other vitamins, minerals. In fact, in the charts he has a comparison between vegetables and meat. It's no contest. I mean, just the scales began falling. I just couldn't believe it. And butter, omega-3s in butter. So this book really hit home. I was not the kind of person who was eating big sugary drinks or drinking sugary drinks and eating ice cream. I really didn't have a sweet tooth, but I was a bread person for decades. I was built on bread. That's how my body was composed. And when I was in Japan, it was often very difficult. I was trying to always to get as much rice as I could. So this was an eye opener. Very specifically, Cummins tells you about the calcium scan, the coronary artery calcium score. And some months later, I got one. And again, the shock came. I had a not insignificant score on the calcium arterial score. I was put into a third quadrille for my age, which again just blew me away because I thought I was a pretty healthy. I ate a lot of vegetables. I ate a lot of beans. I ate hardly any red meat. I'm not saying never, but mostly fish and chicken. I really don't enjoy chicken that much anymore because after eating meat, it seems a pale shadow of So that galvanized my attention, and within a week or two, I had started dropping the carbs. All the bread went out of the house. I mean, I understood from that heart disease has not gotten anything to do with meat or cholesterol or fat. I got the whole story. It's a metabolic disease, and I educated myself in other ways as well. Thoroughly convinced. I watched Ivor Cummins' other videos related to this. My girlfriend turned me on to Ken Berry. I was having a lot of acid reflux. This was part of the stress of the injury and the pandemic. And from watching a little bit about that, I discovered who this guy was. And then, subscribing, I found you and Anthony Chafee particularly. So over the course of March to July of 2023, last year, just to make a long experimental story short, I essentially became carnivore. I started keto. I'm probably ketovore technically. I might have 10 grams of carbs a day on a big day, a few raspberries a day, maybe, the least glycemic fruit, a couple of squares of dark chocolate. That's pretty much it, other than meat and fat. So that's how I got to this point. Now the results have been incredible. I mean, I lost 40 pounds without even lifting a finger. The only work I had to do to lose that weight was lifting the bags to get the pasta and the rice out of the house. That was it. I mean, otherwise it was just putting food in my face that wasn't beans and all the rest. I was in shock. I mean, the first week I lost 7 pounds. I was not an exercising person. I walked. I could move around, but I never was a gym guy. So I was not doing anything like that. That had nothing to do with the weight loss. Amazing. To feel like you're in control like that easily just by eating fat and protein.
That's a big part of it, right? You suddenly feel like I can control this. I've been basically a victim all my life, and actually I was able to be in control.
Yeah, it's just very empowering. And when you realize everything they're telling you, these guys that are working against the absolutely injurious, wrong-headed approaches that we've been shoved down our throat for the last 40 years. I mean, during my conscious lifetime as an adult, when you realize your body is doing exactly what they tell you it's going to do, it's a marvel. I mean, you really respect the body, its intelligence. It's just a real mind blower. I mean, my sense of the whole medical profession has completely changed. And I'm an educated person. I believed in doctors, sort of. They were always annoying, but they are useless to me now. Useless. The last thing I have to get off of is my blood pressure. I've had blood pressure problems since I was 27 years old. Not catastrophic, but that's a young age to have blood pressure issues. And, it's gone up and down. I've never felt secure that it really was managed correctly. Although now I don't believe the numbers that they tell you have to get to either. I'm a 60-year-old man at this point. They're still trying to get me to, 120 over 78. But the point is, not one doctor since 1988, when meds were first discussed with me, as an otherwise healthy and health conscious individual, not one doctor mentioned that there could be a metabolic relationship between blood pressure and what you eat, that there's a metabolic relationship, that there's all I ever heard. And my father, by the way, was a physiologist, and I don't hold this against him. His specialty was the eye, but never mentioned this. It's just, how could they not have mentioned it? Maybe shoving carbs down your face every day could be, because that's right around the time that I went on this high carbohydrate approach, right when they started diagnosing me. And all I heard was idiopathic. You have idiopathic blood pressure, which just means
In other words, we don't know.
we don't know, and it just must be, poor guy, you're 27 and you have blood pressure and you weigh 140 pounds at that time. By the way, I now weigh what I weighed, when I started college, and that's about 142 pounds. It just feels great. I mean, muscle mass is an issue. I'm working on that. We can talk about that kind of thing, because that's one of the results of carnivore as well, what you're able to do with your body in that way. But yeah, so the blood pressure never mentioned to me.
Did
In terms of
you
yeah.
notice? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to talk about doctors and how little they're interested in hearing the experience. I mean, as every guest who comes on here tells you, all the doctors want to do is put me on statins. I've had the blood work a year later. Overall cholesterol is up, and LDL is, to them, a frightening number. I am very secure in my numbers. My triglycerides dropped. My HDL has never been higher in my life. My ratios, I'm not going to get into all those details, but after some self-education, I realize I am absolutely secure with the blood numbers, and I don't believe it a thing that my medical providers are telling me. They will not listen or give one word of encouragement. Blood pressure down, HDL never higher, lost 40 pounds, never felt better. I'm the weight I was, in college. All they will talk
But
about is,
your LDL.
yeah, that's it. In fact, immediately I was told, get off of keto. And I just wrote back and said, I'm sorry. This in this case was by communication by email, but I said, no, I'm not getting off of keto. You're not looking at all this other stuff. By the way, the most important number, Dave, to me was, I insisted that they need to test my fasting insulin, not my glucose. They did that too. But from Ken Berry, I think particularly, I learned to insist. They wouldn't do it. They refused because I'm not diabetic, supposedly. That was their reason. I said, I'll pay for it if that's what's necessary. They finally ordered it. My fasting insulin is almost at the very bottom of the register, meaning I'm highly insulin sensitive. My body is functioning absolutely the way it should metabolically. So they're useless to me. I mean, there's no way to have a conversation. I barely can see them anyway. In this country, we always say politically, we don't want to ration healthcare. I don't want to get into the politics of healthcare, but how could we ever have anything like socialized medical care in America is rationed. You can barely get in to see anyone anyway. I have to go up to a city an hour and 20 minutes away to get a primary care doctor. Most of my interaction is by
to tell you need to take statins.
Yeah. So, but for no one to mention about blood pressure, that metabolic health could be part of it, and inflammation, and to never have heard one word over 40 years is just really shocking to me.
And you're right. Over 40 years, the fact that it became an issue so young,
yeah,
and they just went, we don't know what it is, just take this medicine, is ridiculous.
Yeah, I put off the medicine for a while, but eventually, I had to get on the meds, and it's come down now. My goal this year, Dave, is to just get off that one last pill and never have to go to those doctors again. I mean, I just won't go anymore, basically. If I need the blood work once a year, otherwise, I've got the symptoms from this accident, so that's a separate sort of thing. I've got migraines, and that may be a continuing thing, although I'm still hopeful about a full recovery. It's been 4 years now. I never had headaches before, so that's an issue that's caused by an injury. But otherwise, Yeah, that's my goal by the end of this year. I'm going to really, I've learned how to do the blood pressure in the appropriate way, how to test 2 times a day over 2 weeks. I just haven't quite committed the time to doing that yet, but I want to see, do I need to be medicated anymore after a year of this carnivore? Yeah.
Yeah. And regarding the injury, have you noticed, has there been any improvement in any of the symptoms associated with that?
I think certainly from the very beginning of the accident, yeah, but related to carnivore, it's tough. I think the photosensitivity. I mean, I really had a hard time looking at screens, and this affects your work life. No matter almost what job you're in. I can't watch a big screen TV. That was just impossible for me without the darkest sunglasses on. I think that has slowly improved. But really, the carnivore, what it's helped is the psychological and just the physical robustness in general. I was afraid to move. I was afraid. I feel things in my body a lot, and there just was a lot of trepidation and anxiety, medical anxiety caused by the injury, which meant I was shrinking into further and further immobility. With carnivore, I just have the energy, and now physically the confidence that the body is responding. So I can get into what I've done now in terms of physical health and working out, if you would like. This is another thing. I remember Anthony Chafee talking about this on his channel. He was an athlete. He was a rugby player. The guy's huge. That wasn't me, but he would always talk about being able to just get up the next day after working out intensely and not feeling it. He could just go, go, go. I've already experienced that. I mean, I have started working out. I got a bike in the garage for the first time in my life. I'm hanging from pull-up bars. I'm going up to 50 push-ups, squat. A lot of just sort of body weight work. I would have thought I would be barely able to move after doing some of these workouts, after having done almost nothing for years. I get up the next day, I don't feel a thing. Whoever's listening, I'm telling you, just try it for yourself. None of the lactic acid, none of the soreness. I just feel like very optimistic about my physical life after this, and that is carnivore, no question.
Yeah. And so are you eating like one meal a day, 2 meals a day?
I eat 1.5 to 2. I would like to do one. On some days, I've done one. The problem for me is I have a hard time getting enough in during one meal time. And then I don't want to be getting late in the evening and feeling like I want more. So I do about at the most, a 6 hour window. Many days it's a 5 hour eating window, early afternoon and then the early evening. Um, Another thing that's just completely different. I mean, I remember with my ex-wife, we would go on road trips and packing up all the food. Oh, we're going to get hungry, and the fruit and the nuts, I just get up in the morning and leave. I've eaten from yesterday. I don't feel hungry. So yeah, 1.5 to 2 a day with a very short window. Another huge change in my life. My cooking and food prep. I now live by myself. Everything takes more time when you're not in a couple. It's so much simpler. The cleanup, the amount of stuff I have to buy, the number of pots and pans. I
One
just got,
plate, one pan.
yeah, I mean, some days I've cooked a steak or some whatever it is. I eat a lot of fish too. That cast iron skillet, it cools down. I stick it in the fridge and use the delicious butter from the day before for the eggs the next day. I mean, yeah, I wash my plate and my silverware, but sometimes that pan just goes in a constant circulation.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so you've been eating this way since March of last year.
Yep.
Um, you're having really good results. Do Obviously your girlfriend knows about this because she introduced it to you. But
Yes.
like, what about have any friends said anything?
Well, they've heard about it. I mean, they've heard about it from me. I'm probably in a slightly evangelical mode. I mean, I feel the need to just let people know to look into things themselves. I give them a little précis, I mean, everybody knows I lost a lot of weight. I mean, in the pandemic, and then from some of those medications, particularly, one of them, I was dreaming about dinner rolls and just shoving them in my mouth. That medication helped me, and I don't want to get into it, so I don't regret having taken it. But I was 40 pounds heavier on a very small frame. I'm 5'10". It was obvious, like what's happened, and I've been on a little bit of time away from being physically in the workspace, so people saw a big change. They've been interested, but I think they just see it as a curiosity. Um, I get the usual things from everyone, but what about the fiber? That's one of the things I go on about, Dave. Is just the fiber. What a lie! Again, anyone listening, you don't need fiber. You are going to go to the bathroom just fine. Every morning, like clockwork, eat your fat, you're going to be fine. It's a total lie. In fact, that's another issue that I had all of my life, gastrointestinal issues. Never clinical, but it caused a lot of discomfort. Bloating and gas and I know other carnivore type people talk about this, but I might pass some gas once a week on carnivore. I used to go to this meditation center. I've been a meditator for a long time out in California, and they served us up all these beans and brown rice. I could barely sit and meditate. It was excruciating. And I thought, oh, I need to do better and eat more fiber. These people are eating healthy. And the brown rice it's just indigestible. I'm sorry. It's not meant to be in your stomach. 10 years ago, I had my first colonoscopy. I turned 50. There was a finding. I had a cyst of some kind. Again, not to get into it. Everything ended up being okay, but I had a major surgery and part of my colon was taken out. It wasn't cancer, but it might have ended up being that way. But the other, and who knows what caused that? But one of the things I was told is you got diverticulosis all throughout your your colon. But don't worry, that's just normal. Diverticulosis is inflammation of your intestines with pockets forming. Oh, it just happens to everyone. I was like, no, I'm sure it happens from shoving beans and brown rice down your face and loaves and loaves every week of whole wheat bread. The lectins, the all the stuff it does to your intestines. Again, I've done damage to my body from eating. I'm now going to show you my other show and tell, Dave, if I can, because this is the book that set me on this course from when I was about 25. It was after college. A girlfriend at the time, back in the mid to late 80s, gave me this cookbook. The cookbook was called, and I still have it, obviously, Jane Brody's Good Food Book. Look at the subtitle.
Living the high carbohydrate way. Oh my goodness.
High carb. This is a historical artifact. And it was my Bible for decades. I've got all the little post-it notes from cooking all the stuff from the book. Jane Brody was the New York Times food editor. This wasn't published by the New York Times, but it was a bestseller. My girlfriend and I were both very health conscious. We were in our young 20s. We ran. We wanted to eat right. And this is what we thought. This is what we were being told. And I still remember, I read it assiduously. There's a whole long introduction on nutrition. And I remember the moment that I read this whole section about potatoes. And she asserts with great confidence, it's not the potatoes that make you fat. It's the butter you put on the potatoes, Dave. It's not the pasta that makes you fat. It's all the rich sauce you put on the pasta. And I said, God, that makes so much sense. Fat equals fat. And I was afraid of fat and eggs and everything else for decades. So these are
that's how they get everyone, right?
Yeah.
That's how they get everyone, because it's just so like it just fits together so nicely. Fat equals fat.
It sounded plausible. I now know the horrible corruption that led to the people being told that. That's the way I would put it. I don't believe in conspiracy theories and that kind of. I don't go in for that. But if one had a mindset towards it's hard not to have your mind bend in that direction. I will at least say corruption, deep corruption, has led to criminally wrong things being told to people during our lifetime, Dave, yours and mine, when we were probably both paying attention. I'm not a person who was out smoking cigarettes and drinking Coca-Colas every day. I had my share of Diet Pepsi, but these are people, we're talking about people who were attempting to be health conscious and thinking that veganism and vegetarianism was good for them. It's just devastating. I'm just glad I still have time ahead of me to correct it.
So on that point, from this point onwards, it's this way of eating for you.
I mean, there's no going back. I mean, my girlfriend is I will say she does express being impressed that once I make a decision about food, I am a lucky person. I've done a lot of different food things. I've spent a lot of time in Japan. Other friends who visit me sometimes have some issues with, foods people aren't interested in. I've never been stuck on that kind of thing. I can try things. I don't get fixated on food because of like and dislike, I guess. So for me, once I made the decision, it was easy. I mean, the amount of bread I've eaten and loved it, and to just give it up quickly, I do feel lucky in that way. I don't feel cravings for it, mostly because I just think of my arteries. I've got calcium plaques in my arteries and probably other soft plaques that can't be imaged very well. And I do not want to have heart surgery in another 12 years or worse, So no, it's not even close. I mean, I'm not even tempted. Even the 2 squares of chocolate or 3 I have a day, very, very dark chocolate. These days I'm thinking maybe you should cut down to 1, yeah, I'm not going back. This is how I live. This is what my body is telling me. If you listen to your body, and again, I feel my body a lot. Some people are more aware of their body sensations than others. That can be kind of a plague, but there's no way that I can't respond to the truth that my body is presenting to me.
Very well said. Like, I've heard a lot of people who are anti-carnivore say, you can't trust your body. What about the science? And it makes no sense. It's like, my body's telling me this is the right thing to do. When I discovered Atkins 20 odd years ago, my body was telling me at that time it was the right thing to do. But I listened to all the bad reports and went, oh yeah, I shouldn't do it, But like, animals don't do that. They go, oh, if I eat this, I feel bad, so I'm not going to eat that. I'm going to eat the thing that makes me feel good. So why are we different,
Exactly. I mean, when you have results this quickly and you haven't essentially lifted a finger other than change what goes in your face. I mean, this whole thing about working out to lose weight. I mean, we all know that's not how it works. But when you see it transform so quickly, I mean, there's 18 other things I can tell you about the results. I just beg people to try it. And this is what I've done with family. No one's done it. Just try it for 10 days. They may do it in the future, and some of them may eventually listen to this. So I don't want to, people have their own journey with it, but a 10-day experiment will give you some kind of a result that will keep you encouraged.
Yeah, I think for most people, it's easiest to get to carnivore when you've tried everything else and you're at the bottom and there's nowhere else to go, right? Because then it's like, well, I'm open to trying anything.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways it was a weird and kind of horrifying gift to have become vegan in the year before the pandemic and then get into a very bad brain injury because it was made clear to me this diet. I mean, I do believe a lot of the anxiety and what eventually became a real bad depression for a time. I just have to wonder how much the diet had something to do with it, frankly. So yeah, I've tried everything else. I've been vegetarian a number of different times. again, I've been food experimental in certain ways, although always very high carbohydrate. And I've never felt better. I mean, let me talk about how I felt in my 20s and 30s, because I feel better than I did then. I'm a much older person, but I did graduate work. And when I was working on my dissertation and my PhD in general, I was plagued, Dave, with not just the gastrointestinal stuff, but with dreadful sleepiness every day in the afternoon when I needed to work. I needed to be doing research and writing, and it was intensive day after day. And I just didn't understand what was going on. I did sleep. I always slept 8.5 hours a day. I've never had trouble. But why can't I stay awake during the day to do this work? I would have to lay down in my office and take naps. Um, and I just thought, well, it's the stress, it's the mental taxation. No, it's after you ate the bagel in the morning and then you had the bagel for lunch with almost nothing on it but a tiny bit of cheese. It was carbohydrate crashing. And I'm telling you, when you eat fat and protein, again, for anyone listening, and I say it with a big smile, that is absolutely, I don't get sleepy. There's no post meal drowsiness. I look back on that and wonder, how did I even finish that dissertation? Because it was bad. Just, not being able to keep my eyes open. I don't feel that way now. And then I was 27. I should have had all this energy. Cardio, I just want to talk about that. I've got this exercise bike. I'm trying to build up leg strength. I'm a guy entering his 60s. I now know how important that is. I don't want to be falling over in another 15 years. I just cannot believe what I'm capable of doing. I'm talking on the phone with my girlfriend while I'm doing this. It's not a light workout, and I've done almost nothing for years. Let's talk about something else, Dave, that people often don't like to talk about, and talk about our sexual lives. Sex is important to human beings, and it leads to happiness, especially in relationships. It's part of the totality of who we are. It's important to me. And even as an older person, that part of my life is important. Carnivore helps your sex life. My libido, it never disappeared, but I won't get into too much detail, but I'm just going to say this affects all parts of your life, your mind, body, system, including your sex life. You feel good about your body, but it's more than that. Natural things start occurring with your hormones and your physical health that improve your sex, that part of your expression as a human being.
To be honest, I think that this is the real sign that this is the right way to be eating, because everything improves.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm going on a diet, I'm losing weight, and you're just restricting to only eating carrots or only eating broccoli every day or something, right? So your body's probably going, what's happening? Everything else shuts down, but because you're taking in so little nutrition, you lose weight. But carnivore is not like that. You're actually feeding your whole body, and so your whole body responds positively, right?
It's the entire mind-body system. That's how I would put it. From psychological health down through, if you want to make it a hierarchy, sexual health, your robustness in life. Yeah, I couldn't concur. I couldn't agree more. I've had young guys around town, talking to people, shopkeepers and stuff, and I like to talk to people, and one thing leads to another. They find out how old I am, and I talk about carnivore with them, and they're just, I kind of say, look, this is what meat does for you boys. Come on, you're still young. Start now. I wish I had.
And for these young kids, put down the soy and eat some meat,
And just the carbs, and I'm enough of an observer about society, and again, I'm a kind of history person. The changes, and again, our lifetime, Dave, with how people look, and I don't make it a moral issue. People have been fed crap, and the crap is being put into the grocery store, and they eat it. And the bodies of people who are young, it just makes me really upset because I'm walking around looking at people who I just know aren't healthy. You can't be that heavy when you're 25. I was thin then and still wasn't healthy because of what I was eating. Um, I was recently in Taiwan, and I'd never been there, and my girlfriend is originally from Taiwan, and we were visiting there, and we both were commenting on the just patently clear increase in weight in Taiwanese people, and this is a culture that ate meat, ate a lot of green vegetables, but very little carbohydrate. A little bit of meat and fish at every meal, and a lot of leafy greens, but the weight on people there, I was shocked because I've been going to East Asia since 1985, including Japan. But I was not prepared for what I saw in Taiwan. And it's because I saw donut shops around, muffin shops, all this stuff that's based on, I don't want to say I don't like this Western Eastern thing because Westerners didn't used to eat this way either. But just the amount of flour and sugar that's available on every street corner, and people are eating it.
Yeah.
And so when I see
Japan's
young
going
people,
this way as well.
yeah, Japan as well. Yeah. Um, I want to go back to
Yeah.
a point we made a few minutes ago. We were talking about how the body responds, and those that are
Mm.
against carnivore will say, well, what about the science? And I just want to say, I know what you mean by that, but I want to say to anyone listening, of course, the answer is the science also proves carnivore is the right way to eat. It's not just your body. The science and what your body tells you are saying the same thing if you look at the science that's the correct science. Okay, if you don't look at numbers that are manipulated and you don't look at people who are pushing an image that came out in the 1970s, essentially. Dr. Greger is the same age, roughly. He bought into it and still believes it, that vegetarianism is the right way to go. But the science doesn't actually tell you that. That's what I learned from Ivor Cummins and the rest of you, Chafee and Ken Berry. My doctor doesn't know the science. So it's not just that the body tells you, look at the science the right way. And the science tells you as well. And I know you know that, of course, Dave, but I just wanted to say it out loud.
Yeah, it's important, like, because most people, they're going about their lives, they're working, they've got all those stresses, they've got family stresses and all that kind of thing. And so when they see a headline on the news or they hear some influencer on YouTube talking about how, eating 5 vegetables a day or something, that's the way that's going to lead to optimum health, they go, okay, well, that's the answer, I'm going to do that, I'll get my kids the veggies for dinner and all that kind of thing. um the problem is they don't have time to think about the nuance, so this issue just keeps getting worse and worse and worse, right?
It's really a sad state of affairs, and I'm not sure. I think there's a growing army of people like us, and I think it's having an effect. But the weight of you know so-called information on the other side and the money behind it, going to the grocery store and realizing. I mean, for years I've understood this. I didn't buy much from the middle of the aisles anyway, but I still bought bread and pasta and rice, and that's bad enough. But then when you're doing the high processed non-food packaged stuff that's frozen and all the rest of it and all the stuff that's in there, that's all people have known now. They've been raised on that. And really, quite frankly, it's not just our generation. I remember being surprised a bit by my grandparents. Their generation adopted this stuff too. People born in the 19 teens and 20s, they were the ones that started using Crisco. The American Franken-food system began early in the 20th century, and they started it, but we've continued it, turned up to 11. And so how to push against that when the money is on the side of pushing the propaganda? It can be demoralizing. But I think the system's about to crumble in certain ways. We all know the medical system, at least in this country, It's not sustainable. People are reaching the end of their tolerance. Both the doctors in their own way, of course, and the patients. Everybody talks about it when you have conversations with your friends. I can't get a doctor. The doctors have 10 seconds with you. Um, I'm not getting better. I'm getting heavier. I don't feel well. Something's going to break. And I guess all we can do is just be. I like to be the smiling carnivore. I mean, yeah, I'm not eating lettuce and carrots anymore, and I'm smiling. I mean, that's the only way to do it, is to show people how happy you are and how good you feel.
Yeah, well said. So, Scott, do you have any social media or any way of getting in contact if people want to reach out?
I really don't. I'm not a social media person, and this is something that you and I talked about just before we started recording. And I want to just emphasize I'm actually a very private person, and going on this YouTube channel and being interviewed by you, I'm very happy to do it. I volunteered to do it, but for me, it's because I'm just so passionate about this. My experience has just been a turning point in my life, and I can't believe how deluded I was. And so I decided to go on to YouTube. I mean, no, I don't have a channel. I don't have an X account or anything else. Um, I hope they just take my story and that it helps anybody who might be curious about this.
Yeah, no worries. And look, if someone really wants to reach out, they can always just send me an
Please,
email and let me know, and I can pass their
that,
details
that
on
would
to
be
you.
wonderful. Yeah, and I'm very happy to talk to people. I'll try not to go overboard with the gushing about this, but yeah, if anybody has any interest about my particular experience, I'm happy to. As you can tell, I think this is a really important turning point in social understanding about who we are as human beings and what our bodies really need. So I'm happy to help if someone writes to you.
No worries. Well, thank you so much for coming on today, Scott, and sharing your story. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dave, and thanks for everything you do with your channel. It's really helping people. And again, my coming on here is in a way by way of a thank you to you.